Hello and welcome to Perseus Conversations. And today we have a very exciting guest, huge experience. This is Paul. We'll bring Paul on now and he can introduce himself and his amazing experience. Hello, Paul.
Hi, James. Hi, community.
So I was just saying, I'm amazed at all that you've done. There's so much. So do you want to give us a little introduction to yourself, who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your background? We're going to go into it in more detail later on.
Sure, yeah. So, hi. So, I'm Paul Diamond. I grew up in southeast London, and really from a very early age, I was kind of obsessed by the spirit world and by magic and by all of that. And really kind of was sort of from the get-go started to try to practice whatever I could get my hands on. And that led me to all kinds of things along the way, really. I have a master's in study of mysticism and religious experience from Canterbury, and another couple of bachelor's degrees. So I got kind of formal education and academic education. And I have definitely appreciated that academic aspect throughout my work. It's given me quite a firm foundation of rational, logical thought on one hand, and a kind of a textual basis and an analysis on the other hand. I could reference certain experiences that I was having very directly through the text that I was reading, and that was very useful along the way, really. And then I kind of moved out and went into all kinds of different schools and just had a very profound and deep love for mysticism, magic, meditation, all the M's really. And just went as deep as I possibly could into all of them. I didn't ever really sort of restrict myself to any one kind of arena particularly. And it's not, in fact, actually, although it might seem like it would inherently lead one towards a type of perennialism, but actually I'm not necessarily a perennialist. I see the kind of I see the differences as much as I see the the similarity, and this is often sort of a little bit challenging for people actually who kind of often are coming with a perennial stance and expecting that. But actually, I give each tradition that I've kind of worked with in its own credence. I do see similarities, obviously, but I don't necessarily think that they're all pointing up the same mountain, even. Definitely not the same paths, obviously, but perhaps not even the same mountain. Different goals, different ideas, different methods.
I mean, I think because, like I say, it's so vast what you've done. I look at that and there's so many things. It's like my wish list.
It was my wish list. That's why I did it.
You've done a great job, and to be able to, like you say, give each tradition its own uniqueness, respecting them all is wonderful. So, I mean, let's go into the first because we've got a lot to cover. The first one here we've got. Let me bring that on here. Is the we put this down as the traditional lineages, the Tantra, the Daoism, and the internal arts. So would you like to just go into those a little bit? Your training, because they're big labels as well, aren't they? What specific arts they are, and what some of your experiences are there.
Well, definitely on the tantric side, direct, immediate experience was prior to my any studies really in that arena. Really the very first time I took LSD, as it was for a lot of people, the tantric deities were just there, and I didn't know of them kind of previously in any real way. There were names and ideas there that I'd not encountered, and I had no background in that from a genetic perspective or really anything really kind of prepared me for that necessarily. And really I kind of took off from there and began to explore the kind of the yoga schools and the tantric schools. Spent many years in India, about 3.5, 4 years in India, and you know, met many teachers and did lots of kind of study with different people. Mostly it was very Kali orientated, very Mahavidya orientated, and I did have a tendency to the kind of the more extreme paths generally. So I did find myself with the Agora and hang out with them quite a lot, and getting initiated into a certain line of Agora later on. And I had a bit of a kind of a rebel boy spiritual attitude in a lot of ways. So I kind of brought that to my spirituality and found myself, you know, engaged in Voudon later as well. And the thing about these things, of course, is these traditions have really none of that when you're in them. I mean, they're only externally seen as being so, but from the inside, actually, it's just a kind of another form of, you know, magic or mysticism, shamanism. Yeah. So I met Amma and had a very big opening with Amma. Stayed with her for some months kind of after that, and met many saints and masters actually in that period of my life, and kind of took formal initiation into Sri Vidya, into Agora, and into Mahavidya Tantras, and you know, ended up doing kind of like 1,000,000 mantra for Smashankali and some fairly extreme hardcore type practices.
You've been busy.
Yeah, very, very busy. I have never really stopped, you know, really from the get-go. I just, you know, put my mind to, I had the idea of liberation of it and enlightenment in mind when I was kind of setting out, and kind of I just kind of shoveled everything into that kind of categorization, that everything was leading
so relate
to
that. Yeah. If it's not pulling me out of samsara, then I'm not interested. Yeah,
like this. Yeah. And had some very, I would say, complete Kundalini awakening experiences. Not particularly interested in the phenomenological side of these things any longer. And definitely it kind of showed me what was kind of behind or beyond the phenomenological experiential side of Kundalini, which was really a kind of a direct experience that you are her, I am her. It kind of shifted perspective from movement in the spine and serpent imagery and, you know, whatever it may be, to me and her, with me being very tiny and her being very big, and then the little just gone, just her. So that
perception
kind of
change
tantric realization. Yeah, total and radical shift in the ground of identity of being.
Did that remain?
Not, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the kind of thing, it's like switching on a light. You, once it's seen, it's seen. It can't be unseen. And because it's not grounded in phenomenological stuff any longer, yeah, it's complete and permanent. But it is only a kind of, you know, it's kind of not in the, just in the ground of identity.
Gosh.
Which is radical, obviously, but...
Yeah. Wow. So that 3 to 4 years, you packed a lot in India, because sometimes it takes a year or two just to find the right people.
Yeah, no, I did most of this stuff on my own. I'll be clear. I had teachers along the way, and, you know, initiated along the way, but they were all, you know, there was a sort of just an allowing me to do my own stuff within that tradition almost. So the Kundalini stuff was kind of, again, it was a little bit LSD orientated, a little bit ayahuasca orientated, some of it meditative and within the traditions that gave birth to it, but often not. just something kind of within me. And by extrapolation, for the way that I teach and think, by dint of it being in me, therefore in everybody. Yeah, you know, that's a universal possibility, got nothing to do with being even an initiate. Rather, it's just that's what the human energy system is capable of. And I've experienced two aspects of this, in fact, that I think is not often, well, it's not really talked about very, very much at all, which is actually, it's not just the Kundalini, it is also the dragon force, and they are distinct. And I've encountered, not just encountered, I've been radically transformed by both of these fundamental, transformative, evolutionary energies. Kundalini within the spine, absolutely, very feminine, you know, feels exactly like the goddess is the goddess, but when the mudras come through and the kriyas come through, very kind of flowing and graceful, and, you know, you kind of know that it's feminine. And you feel where it is in the body, you know, in the spine. Dragon force absolutely comes up the central channel, which is not the same as the Daoist Chongmai, or central thrusting channel. And when this comes up, it's fully masculine, and the mudras and the energy is very
interesting. You don't hear a lot about the central channel and the dragon force. Yeah.
You do not. And you definitely don't find any school except for my own working with both directly, as far as I'm aware. Is the Daoists kind of, I think they kind of know about Kundalini but don't really talk about it. The Kundalini schools don't really talk about the dragon, don't know anything about it, and most of it's really been completely reduced to myth. People are practicing Kundalini, but people are not practicing the dragon force outside of the Daoist schools. But again, they don't really kind of involve Kundalini work. So this I've found to be very, very unique. And they both have this kind of, you know, neurological, physiological, biological, energetic, evolutionary capacity, potentiality. They both change you on a kind of like massively radical level, let's say.
Well, so as a result of the dragon forces, I'm not sure if I've seen, because it's hard to identify these things. I think I may have seen something similar in Silat. I'm not sure, but I know in those things in Silat, I've seen that out of that experience, and it would normally be done in fasting and in a period of deep practice, that new jurus or forms, as we'd say in Chinese martial art, would come out of that. Spontaneous movement would come out of that.
Yes. It is 100% my understanding that that's where it all comes from. That's what yoga is direct experience, is body you know, when energy rises, body throws itself into automatic postures. Teacher thinks, if I teach the postures, maybe it will open up their energy. And it's, you know, it's a form of reverse engineering, we can say. That's exactly where it all comes from, in my opinion, because I've had direct experience of all of that happening automatically as a result of these energies moving. Is I've had full-on asanas. I always get mudras are always coming through, mantras sometimes. And again, it's, you know, because I've trained both traditions and because both these things have awoken in me, they take very specific forms. It's internal martial art forms when the dragon force comes up, internal, you know, Daoist mudras and, you know, sword finger and all of that. And when Kundalini force comes up, you do yoga. Yeah, it's like this.
So with those manifestations of those energies, do you feel, it's always hard to see, and I know certainly within my experience of it, it was quite hard to recreate. Do you feel do you feel now with your experience there, you have kind of a repeatable method to get people through that?
Yeah, I do. I have a method. You see, I have combined all of this work with ayahuasca work, and I have seen a very, very wonderful symbiosis of that relationship is a big, let's say it's like a big download of prana or chi in one go. And if you train the pathways in the meantime, then the energy knows exactly where to go, and the body will absolutely go through the same processes and in a much shorter amount of time that it would take that if they did not have that massive download. Now, the problem, of course, is if you get the download without building the channels and working on that level, well, then you've got all of this energy that the body's got no idea what to do with, and then you just go up. If you're, you have a good experience, okay, you come up, and then you just come down again. But training Qigong, training Tai Chi, Bagua, with the things that we train during the week, as well as some other things we talk about later. But these train the pathways daily. Then when the energy comes up on the medicines, ayahuasca is really the only one I work with, but when the energy comes up on the ayahuasca, it knows where to go. Is again, the medicines have to have a circulatory system. They do have a circulatory system, and the circulatory system is the meridians and acupuncture channels. And if you have a system for training them, either yoga or that, the Daoist work, then the energy is going to be able to flow evenly, smoothly. And as you come back down, you don't come down to where you were. You come down to a higher level, and you can use that as a kind of a step ladder. It becomes a kind of a progressive path in this way. Otherwise, it's just kind of tourism, in my opinion. You go and see something on Saturday night, you come back, you've got a great story to tell. I'm not interested in this. No. I'm interested in continual evolution. And this is definitely a methodology, and it works highly efficiently. Not to be recommended outside of a teacher's purview. Obviously it needs careful handling. Is not just to be kind of like engaged with, spontaneously or off the cuff, but sensibly managed. This is a very, very wonderful unification.
That's
probably
wonderful, because
this back in the day.
I mean, like I say, I've seen a few things. There's not, like, you're doing unique work here. Yeah. From what I can see, it's like you say, usually these schools, because they are very traditional, they stay within their own bounds, and they don't even really look outside. It's only people like us who are obsessed, who look at everything, and I want it all, who kind of start crossing boundaries and seeing how things work together, because it's all, we're supposed to have it all. This is an expression for humanity, and working with our bodies. So that's really, I think, Paul, if you're not writing a book, I think you should be.
I need an editor. I have written a biography, but it needs serious editing, and I can't be bothered.
Let me know. We'll sort it out. It's like, because really, I remember years ago. We'll get onto the next bit in a minute. But I remember years ago, I found a guy. It didn't happen. It was so close in southern India, and he had a system, and it was an old system of Southern Kalari, and it was the closest that I could kind of feel like I was getting to a combination of the Kundalini, but also the kind of energy work that I found in Silat, which I believe is more sort of dragon based, where he would talk about the old Kalari, if you like, being expressed physically, but from an energetic source. And didn't happen, but it's great that this stuff. It's always people like yourself who go out there, cross traditions, and do the hard work, so that other people can now be introduced to it in a more safer environment. So awesome, Paul. I mean, before we move on a little bit, like with the internal arts, because as you mentioned there, these can be vessels for that work. So you're well versed in Tai Chi, Bagua, Zheng Yi.
Not so much in Zheng Yi, although I have trained some, but Bagua and Tai Chi have taken pretty seriously and gone pretty deep into, and Qigong, Neigong.
Well, so where did you do all that training? That's great. I love those arts.
I did a lot of it in London, actually, back in the day, and
great teachers,
yeah, it's a real melting pot. Yeah, I was lucky to kind of grow up there. Really, actually, gave me a lot of opportunities straight away. because it wasn't in my immediate environment, but
Mm.
you know, having access to kind of Watkins bookshop in London.
We probably walk past each other in Watkins.
Yeah. I know Alex Cosme used to go there a lot as well, so I probably bumped into him at a certain point.
Exactly. Alex is there like every week. I think I was there every week. Yeah.
I've kind of worked a little bit with Alex on and off over the years, you know, kind of on online stuff. Did a couple of workshops with him back in the day. But again, a lot of this I've had to do online in more recent years. I did train with people back in the day, but since I've been living in Peru, access is very limited here. It's very limited. So
I think as well, like once you've got the foundation, once you've done that training, it's like easy to go, oh, okay, I've got it. But if you haven't got the foundation, it's really hard.
It's impossible. I wouldn't even know. It's impossible to learn these things online. But yeah, exactly. Is once you know what you're doing with it, if you can train with whoever. And COVID for me was wonderful, in the sense that it gave me access to teachers that I wouldn't have had access to before that time. So I was very lucky to be able to start to work with a bunch of people that I'd really wanted to work with, but couldn't afford to go and travel and work with them.
Yeah. Wow. That's all. I'm inspired already. All right, let's move on to our next section. Franz Bardon and Hermetic training. I love it. All right. So tell us about your journey with Franz Bardon. When did you discover his work? And I mean, because you've been all of the previous stuff, it's already amazing. So when did you?
Well, it wasn't that long ago. Actually, it wasn't that long ago. I've probably only been really working with the Bardon systems maybe 4 years, maybe 5. Not that long. And I'd never heard of him before then, in fact. But I was pretty obsessed by evocation generally, and found Jake Green's evocation masterclass. I forget the name actually. Yeah, something like this. Anyway, and just kind of banged through that, and that just kind of opened me up to that whole field, possibility of energetic transmission on a magical basis, hermetic basis, the work itself, the teachers within that tradition, basically, or at least the ones that I've met and worked with. So then I started to work with 60 skills, and I started to work with Mark Rasmus, but 60 skills was kind of personal relationship. Mark Rasmus was just his online material, but I definitely don't want to negate the power of his online material, because that is very, very, very high level stuff. So I worked through all of his initiation into Hermetics course. I worked through the whole of the magical evocation course. I worked through the whole of the Kabbalah course with them, and still working with 60 skills. We're on Gebura of the Sephirot now, but I've worked through the letters, the planets, the zodiac, now the Sephirot with him.
Oh, you're going through the 5 levels of 60.
Yeah, I've done it all since I jumped in on letter P. So I haven't done the previous letters with 60, but I did the other letters with Mark and Jake.
Oh, and Jake, yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the great thing, is that we've got this body of knowledge, and then everyone takes it and has their own expression of it.
And I like this. I even if I like somebody that I'm working with, or I like the system, I want to find other people around that who are teaching it in maybe a similar way or a slightly different way. And I like to learn the variations on a system rather than just the one view of it. And I didn't realize how kind of, I worked a little bit with Radar Soul as well, just on your website. But, this kind of very broad view of this kind of Western Kabbalah is very kind of open-ended. You can kind of do what you want with it. I like it.
It's wonderful. It's like a set of, it's like, I think, the cosmic levers, and there you go. It's like the letters, and the letters just become more and more fascinating, don't they? And then, and then when you add in what you're doing with 60, are you doing that on the Sundays?
Yeah, Sundays.
Yeah, wild. So how, if you were to compare, I mean, obviously you can't compare, but in terms of it's hard to compare, but in terms of the energy work that with the Hermetic training and with the previous things you were doing with the Kundalini and the dragon energetics, qualitatively, say the word, how would you compare your experience, and how do you think that previous training kind of helped you go quickly into the letters and go through that training?
Of course, after a certain time, it becomes very difficult to say. It becomes virtually impossible to say what is influencing what. It becomes just your baseline. So that's just how it is. And then, obviously, I think that we can say something like, the kind of the final stages of these kind of Kundalini and dragon type energies are a kind of a unified field energy, ultimately. However, the kind of the letters and the planets, etc., give you a way to break that down into pieces again. So it's the same, same final.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah. So it gives you a bit more of a specific way of describing those forces or the manifestations of those forces.
Yeah, this of course really has always been the kind of the understanding really of all of these energy systems. The hexagrams of the I Ching is obviously, that's the Tao broken down into 64, and this is the Tao broken down into 26. In terms of letters, yeah, it's like that. That's how I view it, really. A way to kind of slice it up, even if it's not. You'd still recognize it's one pie in the end, but now there's many slices to the pie, so you can analyze it very carefully in each individual aspect.
Wonderfully described. Yeah.
And gives you something to work with very practically, of course. The Tao as a whole is not very useful in terms of what can you do with it, but the letters and everything, now you can do something with it.
Well, that's it. Yeah, those bigger forces. Maybe that would have been a better question. It is so vast and cosmic, isn't it? And then when you come down into Hermetics, all right, we've got this vast energy or experience, but we've got these ways of cutting it into little bits and seeing what happens if I just use this bit at this level of reality or this level of reality. Yeah, because I imagine, I would ask, because some people have a lot of hard work with the energetics. They're quite closed, but I imagine just from your training from a young age, even if you were originally, you didn't have any problem with the energetics or feeling or sensation because of all that previous work.
Yeah, no, that's one reason that I really appreciated the kind of the methodologies of Mark 60 and Jake, actually, in the orientation to the somatic, is I was already really good at that. So that made it really easy to approach that work. I've never been particularly clairvoyant. It's not really a skill that I've ever kind of put much energy into or necessarily have as a natural gift. I do most of my work in the shamanic arena, when I'm actually kind of working with large groups of people. I do most of my work really just on a kind of a meta-intuitive level, I would say, and a somatic level again. So yeah, it fitted in quite nicely.
Oh wow! Because you've done phenomenally well, because that's 4 or 5 years to do all of that work.
I'm still working with it, obviously. I can't. Nobody can ever say they're at an end of it, of course.
No, you can never end. But
yeah.
That's still pretty damn good. Yeah. Okay. There's so much to cover, because I think that we got some other things I didn't even include in this list, but this next section I'm really interested in, because I don't know a lot about it, the shamanism and the spirit traditions. So if we could go into that, whether it's is this come from your work in Peru, or is this from other places as well?
No, yeah. Well, I obviously I came across shamanism in all my studies and was pretty fascinated by it. I could easily see the parallels between, what they were doing and what I was doing, kind of naturally, intuitively, and as with whatever training I could get my hands on. So but I would never have ever kind of, put myself in that category, obviously. Well, in fact, I didn't really ever like labels particularly anyway, but I didn't identify as that, let's say. So, but I encountered sort of the information about ayahuasca during my first bachelor's degree, and ended up writing my first bachelor's thesis on the nature of relationship between language and reality. And ayahuasca, of course, I became fascinated with that back then because of its purported ability to make language seen, to make it a visual experience over an auditory experience. And I found this very interesting. And I basically wrote my thesis on the idea that, well, if they have discovered a way to make language visible, I wonder if this is not the same method or the same function or attribute that the yogis were having when they were doing mantra in order to generate yantra. And I thought it must be the same function. It must just be the vibrations of the sounds are different, and they're activating the pineal gland's release of endogenous dimethyltryptamine through vibration, basically breaking down the calcification of the pineal. This is my bachelor's thesis when I was 19. So
you were 19.
Yeah, kind of a little bit
awesome.
away from there, but to some degree, I figured I was right all along, really. But but it wasn't really until many years later that I found someone who actually was going to do ayahuasca, who I felt comfortable doing it with. It wasn't known about really at all in those days. We're talking 25, 26 years ago now, when I first drank. And I was living in Thailand. I had my own yoga center in Thailand, and I was running some fairly intensive yoga retreats, doing the old drink 4 gallons of salt water and throw up every morning, and swallow meters of cloth and regurgitate them every morning, and going quite hardcore. But a guy there, I used to do talks, and a guy there said that his teacher did the ayahuasca, and I'd been in Thailand for about 3.5 years by then. I jumped on the next plane. I flew back home because I wanted to do this medicine so badly. And it was very extraordinary. In all the work that I'd done in all these other traditions, nothing had come close to, well, he pulled a massive demon out of me. And out of all the years that I'd been practicing, I didn't know that I had this big demon in me. I had no clue. I didn't believe in demons. I didn't care about demons. And when it was coming out, I thought, wow, this is interesting. My practice.
What was your experience of that? I mean, did you see it? Did you?
Yeah, well, it was, it was a kind of, well, since then, I've got very involved with exorcism. So it was 100% an exorcistic experience. My body itself was convorting and making kind of demonic movements, but at the same time, I could feel and see the overlay of what it was. And when it was out, I felt very different, and I realized that it had co-opted certain functions of my personality. Even they go in very deep, and I had no real framework for this at all. Yeah, so I thought, well, I better stay and work. So I stayed with my teacher for another 3.5 years, drank hundreds of times more, and did all of his shamanic trainings, including dragon and fairy magic, Egyptian magical systems. And I'd already been trying to practice Voudon on my own, but he was also a Voudon initiate. So many of the things that I'd been doing on my own, he was already a master of. So he was able to take me to some very high levels, and ended up going over to Haiti with him and doing Haitian Voudon Houngan training and all kinds of other things. Yeah.
Wow, well, there's a lot to unpack there. So
I then spent 25 years in the ayahuasca tradition. Well, I'm still very involved as is. So I've been serving medicine now myself for 15 of those 25 years, about 10 years of training, and then 15 years of working with the medicine myself with people.
Let's rewind then to that first occasion where you first drank. And so, like you say, so you had a demon taken out of you now. So that was quite a traumatic first experience with this drink.
Good.
Were you
but traumatic?
Yeah. So in occasions after that, I imagine was a lot calmer, and you're able to sort of go in deeply. And so, I mean, I often thought, because I always thought, DMT, you know, and obviously the plant, the vines, I don't know much about it. I only know terms, but from what I've heard, the vines or the ingredients or the spirits of the plant are sort of entwined with the power of the DMT. Is that right?
I think, generally speaking, that our obsession in the Western discourse on ayahuasca with the DMT aspect has been a kind of a fundamental error. Yes, good. DMT is interesting, but that's about it. It's interesting. But the power of the medicine is not in the DMT stage of the medicine. This is fairly short-lived, you know, medicine. Ayahuasca lasts about 5 hours, 4.5, 5 hours. And the DMT stage of that lasts about 20 minutes.
Super quick.
And it's by no means the most interesting phase of the medicine at all. The DMT stage or the DMT itself is not fundamentally particularly healing. There are spirits involved with the DMT phase of the medicine, which are involved in kind of brain surgery. They do a lot on these kind of higher centers. But again, it's short-lived and it's not the main healer. And the visionary aspect of it, mostly the visions are meaningless. I have a theory. My theory is that when we were young as a species, DMT was more prevalent as the primary neurotransmitter. As we evolved as a species, we grew into a serotonin-based reality. And this kind of cut us off from the spirit world generally and other aspects. Now, when people do DMT, either smoked or as part of the ayahuasca experience, very often have these kind of visions of something almost childlike, circus-like, clown-like, child's toy kind of imagery. And I suspect that when we're young, there's this, I can't remember which way around it is something like phylogeny recapitulates entogeny, or the other way around, I can't remember. But it's basically that the growth of the individual sort of maps and mirrors the growth of the species at large. It's similar to Rupert Sheldrake's kind of morphogenetic field kind of theory. How does an acorn know to grow into an oak? Because of the morphogenetic field. Well, likewise, how do we know to grow into a human being? Well, because we follow and map the growth of the species as a whole. So a species was young, DMT primary neurotransmitter. When we are young, DMT primary neurotransmitter, serotonin only really kicking in fully at puberty. This is my understanding. So many of the kind of the images and things like that are of that kind of view of the world. But again, not the most fundamental aspect of the medicine. The vine is way more interesting.
Let's go into the vine. Educate me on this, because I'm very interested, but I'm obviously not very knowledgeable.
Most people aren't, of course, unfortunately. You know, it's been very under-researched. There has been research done on the Baniosteropis carpio vine. There's been, I wouldn't say a massive amount, but some. But nonetheless, the attention has been given over to DMT in the discourse fundamentally, and they're missing the vine. Now, the vine on its own has harmalines, B-carbolines, B-harmalines, lots of neurotransmitters, and they are very, very valuable on a biochemical level. But of course, the more fundamental level is the spirit of the ayahuasca is very powerful. Now, I do work with it in a very different way to most people. And I acknowledge this, but I do decry any claims of cultural appropriation or anything like this. Again, I do feel that these things are a world, you know, they're for everybody who knows how to work with them. You know, when I came to my teacher in the jungle, as he was a very famous shaman, actually, Don Agustin. He highest level shaman in Peru. The very first thing he said to me is, "You're an ayahuasquero." And I said, "Well, we don't really have ayahuasqueros in Croydon."
Croydon.
He said, "It doesn't matter. Ayahuasqueros are born, not bred." I thought, oh, that's very interesting. So he recognized it, and I wasn't working with the medicine in that way. I had no intentions of ever working with it for other people. I just trained it because I loved it and I loved my teacher. I wasn't ever going to do it. I thought there's no way on earth I can do that. You know, even with all the things that I'd done, I was like, no way. And even when I was there working with Don Agustin, I had no intention of doing it either. Again, I was just there because I wanted it. I just turned up on his doorstep in the middle of the jungle, and he welcomed me with open arms. He was like, "Yeah, come in," you know. And the very last thing he said to me as I was leaving was, "Go home, run ceremony." And I said, "But I don't know how. No one's told me how." And he said, you know, because I watched them doing it, but I wasn't there to train, and I definitely wasn't taking notes, and no one was sitting me down and saying, "This is how you do it," either. But he said, "It doesn't matter. You will know what to do, and I will help you. Go home, run ceremony." So I did go home and I did run ceremony, and it did go very well, and here I am.
Oh, wow. That's lovely. Yeah, so he was the teacher who taught you all of that, and he's also the one that had all the other knowledge as well.
No, really, actually, no. He came really at the end of my ayahuasca journey. The first guy is a shaman called Peter, and he is very high level being, kind of fun, you know, quite disguised on some level, you know, quite a humble guy, but. You know, I've met many masters in different traditions, and you know, he's one of the highest beings on the planet, in my opinion. Actually, yeah, not very famous, but
wow, very interesting, Paul. So you went home, as in home to the UK?
Yeah, back then, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you did a ceremony in the UK?
Yeah, just for 3 people. But I had
Wonderful.
to brew the medicine myself, which I hadn't done either. Obviously wasn't available or legal particularly, and I managed to brew a very strong medicine somehow, and they all had a very good time, and yeah, I mean, I really kind of took off from there and never really stopped, and that became the kind of the arena in which I could bring all of these other things. It was very useful in that way. It was like I could show myself on one level, which I wasn't really able to do in any arena because there was a lot there to show, and I'm not a show off. So I needed an arena in which to be able to bring forth my abilities and, you know, kind of who I am. And that gave me that opportunity, and I was able to bring in the magical training and the Daoist training and Tantric training. I was able to bring all of that to that arena. It gave me a kind of a somewhere to do it, but also it gave me access to all of these energies. The ayahuasca for me is a major connector. If you know how to, you can connect it to anything, bring through anything with it.
This is wonderful. So that leads us to, so what you're doing currently and have been doing, the Peru Training Center. So, I mean, people who've been listening to this can see that you're very thoroughly trained. So do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction into what you offer to people at your center and how you guide them, and how they work through the huge syllabus, the huge curriculum?
Well, I do very much view it like a big curriculum, but of course not everybody comes for everything. So I teach individual classes, you know, on individual things and individual workshops and individual ceremonies and all of this. But if people do stick around long enough, they'll begin to see that actually it all works together. It takes a while because there is quite a lot there, and I'm always sort of kind of showing a little bit more of it, let's say. But it's people can just come for kind of qigong classes. We do qigong during the week. We do Bagua and Tai Chi during the week. I teach Metta Bhavana and Tonglen and some of the Buddhist heart-based methodologies. We're going to be doing a little bit of kind of a type of bodhisattva type training where I'm going to go kind of deeper into that. And we do weekly ceremonies and weekly fire pujas, tantric fire pujas. And then if people stick around long enough, they'll begin to see that it kind of all comes together again, kind of in the ceremony for the people. It's not, you know, I don't want to give the wrong impression. We're not overly obsessed by it. Let's say it's a useful tool, and but it needs to be very carefully understood. So I give a lot of dharma. I do a lot of teaching with the medicine. It's not enough, even with the other practices, to just do it. It still needs to be carefully analysed and understood in order to really extract the value, because it's very easy to get confused. It can just become a craving or an obsession with phenomenon. It creates a large amount of phenomenon. And people usually just come away with that if it isn't pointed out that what we want to look for is something considerably deeper. Really, that it is a direct mirror to consciousness, and that the phenomenon within consciousness are always just going to be passing transitory phenomenon and shouldn't really be given the, you know, attention that they're often given. So pay attention to what is the generative function or the generative aspect that brings forth these types of visions, not what was the vision. That's not so important. It's kind of like I same as my kind of views on dream analysis is like, yes, there might be some relative value in analyzing what the rose means, maybe, or what the shark means, but it's only relative value. The real value is asking, of course, what is a dream? Where does it come from? What is the function that creates worlds as you sleep? Then you get into kind of more interesting analysis and something more fundamentally liberating. So likewise, I'm not really interested in what people's visions were necessarily. I'm interested in the visionary experience, and I'm interested in what gives birth to these worlds, because I have no real kind of foundational belief in an objective reality. It's not soliptic, but it's definitely not objective. So I'm not convinced that we go into, you know, well, we do go into other worlds, but those other worlds are not other. They're self. They're just unrecognized self. And it's not to kind of, I'm not a reductionist either. This isn't to reduce it all to brain chemistry or psychology. However, we do want to understand that it's our world, and it's always our world, whatever experience we're in, whether it's dream or, you know, waking reality or medicine.
With that said, with like your experience of possible, you know, entities of various kinds, the age old, you know, are they in our, you know, a part of ourselves, blah blah, or are they actually an individual specimen outside of ourselves? I mean, so how do we?
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to understand. Actually, is once you understand or once you accept that it is all entirely subjective, these arguments fall away. Because if all of your experience is subjective experience, well, anything that you can experience is subjective, just bottom line. Does it mean we can't learn from them? No, it doesn't mean this. It's like within a dream, you can learn all kinds of things. It doesn't give it objective status just because there's information there that you didn't have access to, though. That's just hidden aspect of self. Now, again, it's not to be reductionist to either a small self or to brain chemistry or to, objective ego or, a small ego. This is to make the whole thing. It's like the Lon Milo Duquette book, what's it called? It's all in your head, but you've just no idea how big your head is.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Something like this is what it comes to. Is that's God, that's divinity. So yes, of course, there's aspects of it that you are not fundamentally in touch with, and therefore, yeah, you can learn a whole huge amount from them, get energies from them, have experiences of growth and transformation inside of that construct.
Brilliant. Good answer. I will say, I think you've given us a great breakdown of everything today. We're coming up on the hour. So before, I just want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more specifically about how people might be able to get in contact with you, to follow your work, what online activities you may have or channels. Just want to tell people about those things.
That's kind. Yeah, thank you. Well, we have tantric.com website, and then I've got a fair amount of material on Patreon. That's mainly, so I kind of tried to separate it out, which I'm thinking isn't such a great idea now. But anyway, we have the kind of the Western, the Eastern stuff on Tantra, on Patreon. That's kind of internal martial arts, Qigong, some yoga stuff, that kind of stuff on Patreon/Tantra, I guess it is. And then I put a bunch of the Western stuff over on a Shopify site called Tantra Mystery School. And there we've got things like fairy magic, ancestor magic, making talismans, alchemy, all kinds of different things over there. They're kind of like 2-day workshops, a lot of them. And there's a whole bunch of podcasts and things out there somewhere.
Awesome. Well, what I'll do when this goes up, I'll get that other information from you and I'll put all that in the info box for everyone. And so, I mean, as everyone can see, you have a huge amount of education to offer, and more than that, you have the experience of really going after it and finding out the answers for yourself rather than just sort of accepting what a tradition may say, which I think is always important to retread those steps and to see for yourself
carefully.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's really nice. It's like someone else that I'm pretty sure I've probably walked past down, Carnaby Street or down Watkins, now over there in Peru. I mean, are you teaching people flying in, or are you teaching locals as well?
Yeah, both. A fair amount of people have ended up moving here just to kind of stay with me and do some work. So we've got quite a few people in the community who have either worked with me or are still working with me or have moved here to be with me. And then other locals come occasionally, and then new people. It's very much a tourist town. There's many people kind of coming in and out, so it's quite well placed.
Oh wow, I am tempted, Paul. I am very tempted.
Please come, James. It'd be very wonderful.
That would be a great tour to go up there. I've got to get my Spanish up first, and then
mine's crap. Don't worry about it.
But wow, so I'm really happy. I'm really happy to finally get a chance to speak to you. It's been really cool.
Thank you, James.
And really, I think you've got so much there. Probably each one of those subjects we could have done an hour on, I'm pretty sure. So if ever you want to do anything in the future, you just let me know. So what I'll do is now I'll say thank you, Paul, and I'll pull you off, but stay on the line, and I'll chat to you in 1 second. So thank you to Paul. Absolutely wonderful. So much information, so much knowledge. So you'll see down below all the information for Paul to go over. Check out his sites, check out all the links that I provide you there. Thank you for viewing. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you on the next episode of Perseus Conversations. Okay, bye-bye.